Welcome back, everybody, to Choice 2012 here on WBKB News. I'm Marisa McKay, and joining me, as always, is Instructor of Political Science here at ACC, Tim Kuehnlien. Now, Tim, national debt in America, huge issue. What are some of the trends behind national debt?
Well, clearly we're $16 trillion in debt, and much of it is owed to ourselves. Only about 8 to 10% is actually owed to foreign governments. But this has been a long-term trend in the making, 60 years, since the Depression and World War II. Democrats and Republicans alike part of the problem. Obviously, the gap between expenses and revenues coming in, despite the fact that our economy has been growing and contracting at different levels relative to episodes like we saw in 2008. But we have to remember this gap between the expenses and revenues is very much a part of what our House of Representatives initiates. All legislation concerning the taxation rates and the expenditure rates originates with the House of Representatives.
Which is a really good point. I don't think a lot of people really understand that concept when they're voting for the president.
Right.
So that's a great point. And now moving into taxes, obviously the United States has a very long and involved history of taxation. Now, at the debate last week, this was clearly a big issue. So why do you think that this is such an important thing voters need to pay attention to?
Well, because we've been playing a shell game with ourselves, and we're fooling ourselves, and we're in a pickle. And we've got to get ourselves out of this pickle very quickly. We have the lowest rates of taxation for ourselves since the Great Depression. And we're faced with a choice right now. Is it going to be 39% or 25%? When you get right down to it. And these are the marginal rates. The effective rate is what we actually pay when you factor in all the deductions and whatnot. Our corporations contribute about 9% of the total revenues of the federal government. Virtually everything else comes from almost entirely from income tax or the payroll tax for funding Medicare and Social Security. But the gap here, where so few are paying, and we know it's about 53% for one reason or another, is the biggest problem. I'd suggest we have a crisis of patriotism, quite frankly. And the crisis of patriotism is grounded in a national security problem relevant to our fiscal solvency, more so than foreign threats. And so in terms of our Congress and our president and the policy choices that we have, who's fostering growth as much as possible given the circumstances? We are the most advanced industrial nation. Who's suggesting the most significant cuts in the right place given our needs and what we need to accomplish for national security and maintaining our general quality of life? And then lastly, what are the suggestions? Who's suggesting the most significant increases to find the proper balance? All estimates are suggesting that we need to be in the 40% range of marginal rate with limited reductions or deductions along with cuts in order to adequately start dealing with this.
Definitely. I mean, you bring up a lot of good points, definitely things that our viewers and voters alike should be paying attention to and can investigate on their own. Thank you, Tim, for joining me. And you did bring up Social Security and Medicare. That is what Tim and I will be discussing next week here on Choice 2012, so make sure to tune in. And if you feel that you have an issue needs to be discussed here on Choice 2012, feel free to email me at marissa@wbkb11.com.